All right, I'm here, Mrs. Hassler, to do the 9.5 Explore. Today we are going to look at histograms and frequency tables using dot plots, and we will continue to find statistical pieces of evidence such as measures of center, outlier, and range. So it says 2 soccer teams join a league in which every team plays in 12 games per season. The number of points that team scores each game is recorded on the dot plots below. So we have this dot plot with Team A, and they played 12 games. And so, for example, these 2 zeros means that they scored 0 goals for 2 of the games. Okay, and then we have Team B scores, same idea. This 0 here means that Team B scored 0 goals for 1 of their games. This is create a frequency table for each team. Okay. So again, Team A, that's where I'm at right here, they scored 2, they had 2 games where they had 0 goals. There were 3 games where they had 1 goal, 2 games with 2 goals. There's no pieces of data for scoring 3. So there was no game in which they scored 3 goals. So I'm just going to put this hyphen here. They had 1 game where they scored 4 goals. They had 1 game where they scored 5 goals. They had 2 games where they scored 6 goals. There were no games where they scored 7 goals. So I'm just going to put this dash here. I'm not going to put 0. I'm just going to put this dash here. And 8, there was 1 game where they scored 8 goals. All right, let's take a look at Team B. So there was 1 game where they scored 0 goals. No games where they scored 1. And there was 1 game where they scored 2 goals, 3 games where they scored 3 goals, no games where they scored 4. There were 5 games where they scored 5 goals, 2 games where they scored 6 goals. Tongue twisters here. And then they did not score 7 or 8 points in any of their games. All right, so part B says find each part for each team. So I need to find the mean, median, mode, outlier, and range. So for Team A, if I'm going to find the mean, what I can do is say, hey, there were 2 games where they scored 0 goals. And there was 3 games where they scored 1 goal, right? I'm just taking this straight from my frequency table. There were 2 games where they scored 2 goals, okay? I'm not going to include the 3, but there was 1 game where they scored 4, 1 game where they scored 5. There were 2 games where they scored 6, so 2 games where they scored 6. There was no 7, and there was 1 game where they scored 8. And again, I should have a total of 12 pieces of data. So I can either total this column up, and when I total this column up, I should get a total of 12, or I can count the dots on that dot plot. My direction said 12, and so I'm going to add all these up. I get 36 divided by 12 gives me, I'm going to put it over here, 3, a mean of 3. Okay. My median would be the number that's in the middle. And so again, if I have 12 pieces of data, so I have 12 pieces of data, and I want to find the halfway, that's 6. That's the halfway. Halfway through your data. And so what that means is if I come up here, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Coming in from the right, all the way at the right, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so because I've crossed off all my data coming in from the left and right, I have no data left over, I have to find the middle number between 2 and 2. Well, there is no number between 2 and 2. The number between 2 and 2 is 2 itself, okay? The mode is the number that occurred most often. So looking at my frequency chart, 1 occurred most often because it has 3 data points. So careful. Look, even I made this mistake. It's not that 3 is my mode. It's that 1 is my mode. It just occurred 3 times. I would say that there are no outliers here. There are no pieces of data that are really different than the others. I mean, 8 looks a little different, but it's not that far away from 6, which is not far away from 5 or 4. So I would not consider there to be any outliers. And my range is the maximum minus the minimum, and 8 minus 0 is 8. So I'd run through and do the same thing for team B, right? My mean, I have 0. There's one of those. And there was one game where I scored a 2. And there were 3 games where I scored a 3. And there were 5 games where I scored a 5. And there were 2 games where I scored a 6. And that's it. And there were a total of 12 games. If I total this up, I get 12. If I count my dots, I get 12. The direction said 12. And so when I do this calculation, I get 50 divided by 12, which is 4.17. So let's take a look. My mean in table A was 3. This was my mean. Whereas my mean for dot plot 4 was 4.17, so like right in here. And so it seems reasonable that the mean would be about in the middle of each set of data. My median for B, well, again, I have 12 pieces of data, so 12 divided by 2 is 6. That tells me I'm halfway through my data. So it's not that 6 is the median, it's I'm going to count off from the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And coming in from the right, I'm going to cross off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have nothing left over, so I have to find the middle number between 5 and 5. Well, the middle number between 5 and itself is just 5. The mode is also 5. Again, I would say that there are no outliers here. There's not, 0 feels, I guess, a little far away, but it's not that far away from 2. Nothing crazy like we've seen in the other examples. And my range would be the max minus the min, which is 6. Okay, so just some practice creating this frequency table, just some practice finding these measures of center and other statistical values such as outlier and range. And now we're going to talk about histograms. So histograms are graphs that are look like bars, but notice that you have what are called they're called bins, and so you have these intervals. Okay, these intervals here at the bottom. And so let's answer some questions based on these intervals and the heights of these bars. It looks like we're dealing with quiz scores, and this is frequency, so number of students who earned a particular quiz score. It says how many students were surveyed in this study. So if I want to find the number of students, I have to say, well, there were 4 in this interval, and 4 in this interval, and then 3, and then 6, and then 2, and then 4. So I'm going to add all these up. If I add all these up, I end up with 23. It says how many students scored more than 79? Okay. So it looks to me like here I have this break in my data. This goes up to 79. So if I scored more than 79, I'm going to be in this 80 here. And let's assume that we don't have like 79.5. The 79.5 would round up to 80. A 79.4 would stay with the 79. So let's consider whole numbers here. And so how many students scored more than 79? So 80 to 89 and 90 to 99. So I would say 6. How many students scored at most? At most 79 means the most they scored was 79 or less. So 79 or lower. Okay. So again, there's this break right here. So that's like up to 79 including it. So we've got 4 and 4 is 8 and 3 is 11 and 6 is 17. And that makes sense because 17 and 6 is 23. So that uses all of my data. What is the highest possible score? Well, I guess it goes up to 99. I'm assuming 100 could be used, but I don't have like anything past that 99. So based on the intervals that I have for points, I'm just going to say the highest possible score was 99. Do you know with certainty that someone scored the highest possible score? No. I know that there are 4 students that scored between 90 and 99. Okay. I know that there are 4 students that scored between 90 and 99, but I don't actually know what their scores are. I'm going to say don't know actual scores. So a histogram is not helpful in that it does not tell me what the actual scores were. It just tells me how many pieces of data fall within that range. Which interval is the median in? Okay. Again, I have 23 pieces of data, and I'm looking for the halfway point, which is 11.5. That means there's 11 on the left pieces of data, 11 on the right pieces of data, and so there should be something left in the middle since I have an odd number of data. Okay, so here's 4 and 4, that's 8 and 3 is 11, okay? So all of this had 11 pieces of data. And here's 4 and 4 is 6. And so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Means I have 5 extra pieces here, but there's really 6. So my median has to be somewhere in this interval, so between 70 and 79. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and use this Explorer to help us with the 9.5 lesson. I will do a second video for the 9.5 lesson. I just wanted to make sure that you had something to relate to when it comes to building the frequency table, finding these measures of center, and interpreting these histograms. If you have any questions, let me know.